Hi, I'm Dr. Thad Deal, and I want to welcome you here to our workshop on thyroid problems. You are receiving this, or you've been invited to attend this webinar because you have requested information in the past from us about our thyroid recovery program. Either you've long suspected that you have a thyroid problem, have all the symptoms of low thyroid function, only to be told over and over again that your lab tests are normal. Either that, or you've been under care for low thyroid function while continuing to suffer from all those symptoms, while continuing to be told that your TSH and all your other numbers are right where they need to be. I hope and I promise after watching today that you'll understand why you continue to suffer with low thyroid symptoms and why traditional medical management fails to address the cause of your low thyroid function in the vast majority of cases. And hopefully you'll understand what we need to do to help fix it, to make it better. So please watch this through in its entirety, and I will make you a special offer as well as a gift towards the end. Your thyroid gland runs your metabolism. It's literally like the gas pedal of the body. Every cell, or nearly every cell in your body, has receptors for thyroid hormone. So the influence or the effect of low thyroid function can be devastating. We're going to go through normal thyroid physiology so you can understand why traditional medical management fails to address the cause of your thyroid problem in the majority of cases. In response to increased metabolic demands, an area deep within your brain called the hypothalamus sends out a signal to your pituitary gland. That signal is TRH, or thyrotropin releasing hormone. What this does is it tells the pituitary to tell the thyroid it's time to make some thyroid hormone. The pituitary sends a signal called TSH. So if you have a thyroid problem or have ever been checked for thyroid, you're likely familiar with TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. It's oftentimes the only lab test done, and it's the marker that's used to monitor the efficacy of your treatment. TSH tells the thyroid to make T4 and T3. It does so through the help of an enzyme called TPO, or thyroid peroxidase. This assembles 4 molecules of iodine to a tyrosine background and 3 molecules of iodine respectively. T4 and TSH have an inverse relationship. In other words, if T4 is low, TSH will become elevated. If it's above lab ranges, you will be diagnosed with low thyroid function, or hypothyroidism. So traditional medical management in the model, which hasn't changed very much at all other than the names of medications since the early 1960s, is to give you a synthetic thyroid hormone to bring T4 levels back up, which will in turn bring TSH back into a range which they have defined as normal. And if you continue to suffer from low thyroid symptoms, you're going to be told that your TSH is right where it needs to be, and they'll begin to medicate some of those other symptoms individually. So if you're depressed, you'll get an antidepressant. If you have increased cholesterol, you'll be on a statin medication. If you have digestive problems, you'll be taking a medication for that. The problem, one of the problems, is lab ranges, far too broad. Essentially, lab ranges are a bell curve analysis of everyone who's had labs done at a particular location. The other thing is they'll vary from lab to lab, so they're non-standardized. With TSH, I've seen lab ranges anywhere from 0.35 to 5.5, which is far too broad, and really doesn't allow us to pick up problems until they become advanced. The Endocrine Society recommends a TSH range of 1.8 to 3.0. That's what constitutes optimal thyroid function. However, TSH alone is not nearly enough. Now we're going to go through the rest of thyroid physiology so you understand the rest of the story. Again, That right there is the traditional medical management of thyroid problems with synthetic thyroid replacement. It's the old adage, if all you have for a tool is a hammer, every problem is going to look like a nail. In this case, T4 or synthetic thyroid replacement is their hammer, and TSH is the nail. The problem here is your body prefers T3. It's the more biologically active form, and that's why some people will do better on different forms of thyroid replacement that have both T4 and T3. But at this point, about 93% of the hormone is T4 and only 7% is T3. So that hormone needs to be converted in other areas of the body. A lot of that conversion takes place in the liver. In order for hormones to travel through the body, they do so attached to proteins. In order for thyroid hormone to get to the liver or travel through the bloodstream, it does go bound to a protein called thyroid binding globulin. It's like the taxi cab driver that gives the thyroid hormone a lift to the liver for conversion. Once in the liver, there's an enzyme called 5'-deiodinase that cleaves one of the iodines from T4, converting T4 to T3. This enzyme reaction is dependent upon the mineral selenium. So selenium deficiencies can affect thyroid conversion, but also different drugs and medications, things like triclosan found in antibacterial soaps, a chemical called OMC, which is found in the majority of sunblocks, decrease conversion. Cortisol levels, or increased cortisol levels, will increase the amount of reverse T3 made. A certain percentage of T4 is going to be converted to T3 anyway, but the issue with this is this reverse T3 is permanently unavailable to affect thyroid metabolism, so this is lost. It can also compete with the active free T3. Some of this in the liver is converted into T3 acetate and T3 sulfate. They require further conversion, which takes place in the gut. So you need healthy digestion and appropriate levels of good bacteria in the gut for this conversion to take place, or you will suffer from symptoms of low thyroid function. And then once all the thyroid hormone has been made, converted to free T3, it needs to go to the cell, get through the membrane, and attach onto a thyroid receptor where it can influence the cellular machinery and affect your metabolism. So you can see there's a lot of places beyond what the traditional medical model takes into account for where things can go awry. So in other words, there are nearly 23 published mechanisms by which the thyroid can malfunction, and really only about one of those is going to respond favorably to thyroid replacement. But they fall into 6 basic patterns. The first is primary, meaning that the thyroid just isn't doing its job. It's not making enough thyroid hormone. Some of these people will respond favorably to thyroid replacement, but actually the majority of them will not, because the number one cause of primary hypothyroidism is actually an autoimmune condition. Far and away, the number one cause of low thyroid symptom is a condition called Hashimoto's thyroid, and we'll talk about how we look for that and what we would do to address that. Pattern number 2 of low thyroid functions is secondary to low pituitary function. So if we have decreased pituitary function due to stress physiology, oftentimes postpartum, we can get depressed thyroid activity. The third pattern of low thyroid function is underconversion, and that can be influenced again by cortisol levels, certain drugs, deficiencies. So we need to check for those. We need to do all the testing. The fourth is actually overconversion. Doesn't sound like it should be a problem if there's too much thyroid hormone, but just like when there's too much insulin, we can develop thyroid resistance. So if there's too much thyroid hormone available, it's like if I keep yelling at you, after time you're going to tune me out, so I'll start yelling louder, and that will work for a little bit, but we develop thyroid resistance if there's too much thyroid hormone. And this is secondary to increased testosterone levels. So if you haven't had a hormone panel done, this is imperative. In women particularly, poor blood sugar control will cause estrogen to be converted into testosterone, like we see in individuals with PCOS or polycystic ovary syndrome. So we need to check your estrogen and testosterone levels, because category 5, or the 5th pattern, is increased thyroid binding globulin. So if there's too much of this protein and too much of the hormone is bound, not enough is going to be free to get in there and affect cellular metabolism. So in other words, if all the thyroid hormone is locked up in the calves, there's not going to be any available to help you feel better. And the last, but not least, the pattern is of resistance. So in other words, the thyroid hormone is not available to get into the cell to do its job. And this can be influenced by certain vitamins. It can be influenced by errors in fatty acid metabolism, and it can be influenced by inflammatory markers like homocysteine or C-reactive protein. So if you haven't had these checked for, we need to check for those. What does a complete thyroid hormone panel look like? Well, obviously we need to look at TSH, T4, but also free T4, T3, free T3. We can look at reverse T3, something called your free thyroxine index, T3 uptake. We can look at TBG, and last but not least, TPO and TBG antibodies. Now, we might not have to do all of these for every person, but it's a good idea to do a lot of these so we can determine what the pattern is for you. These last two allow us to determine whether or not you have an autoimmune thyroid or Hashimoto's thyroid, in which your immune system is making antibodies, usually against TPO or thyroid peroxidase. So your immune system is actually attacking your thyroid. And again, most of these people are not going to respond favorably to thyroid replacement hormone, because there's an inflammatory immune-mediated attack against your thyroid gland. So we need to know whether or not this is happening, and the only way to know whether this is happening is to do the test. Traditional medicine doesn't do the test usually because it doesn't influence the treatment. They're going to use TSH as the sole marker for treatment efficacy usually, and give you thyroid replacement. Nobody does anything to address the real problem, and that is your immune system. With autoimmunity, we need to find out, why is this happening? What are the triggers? Because there's a strong association with food sensitivities. If you haven't been checked for these, this is a must. Things like gluten, casein, soy, yeast, and eggs can cause inflammation throughout the body and cause your immune system to mount an attack against your thyroid gland and other tissues in your body, including your brain. We also need to look at cortisol levels through something called an adrenal stress index. We can look at gut function through a stool microbial profile to find out whether or not you have healthy levels of good bacteria, but also do you have anything which shouldn't be there. So bacteria, parasite, or yeast infections, in which case we'll need to remove them. We can check for heavy metals. Mercury in particular can interfere with thyroid metabolism. So if you haven't had all these tests done it's important that we do them so we can figure out what is the cause. Why are you having these symptoms? Why do you continue to have these symptoms despite being on thyroid hormone? So by doing all the testing, which hasn't been done, we can address these things through diet, lifestyle, and specific supplementation. And by doing so, we can dramatically improve the quality of your life. I truly believe that, and we've seen great results with a large number of people, not only in this office, but in doctors' offices all across the country. So I would like to extend to you the opportunity to come to our office for a metabolic assessment and a functional neurological evaluation to determine whether or not we can help you. We'll review any blood work which you have done, review your medical records, do complete consultation, and then sit down and go over with you what needs to be done to help you get your life back. And if you make an appointment with us, I'm going to give you a free copy of Dr. Karazian's best-selling book, Why Do I Still Have Thyroid Symptoms When My Lab Tests Are Normal? And this really is our guidebook to help us understand what I just talked about here, what tests we need to do, what are the priorities we need to address, and how are we going to help you get your life back. So I invite you to call our office to schedule those initial 2 visits to, again, discover whether or not we can help you. So please give us a chance to help you rediscover the health that you've lost. I look forward to helping you and hope to hear from you soon.